This video is for project 6.5. Make sure you click on all Office versions underneath the start file. Once you have your Excel spreadsheet up and running in your window, I recommend to immediately go to File, Save As, and give it a location and change its name. I recommend either type in Excel Project 6.5 or just Project 6.5. Okay, starting with number 2, we're going to go ahead and name a range. Remember, we do this because it's just easier to use within formulas and using our copying feature as opposed to typing out a range, which could alter the range. So if you highlight from A to D and bring it down to your last row, which is 28, and then if you go up to the name box, type out the word responses. When you're done typing, press enter, and then make sure you go to your formulas tab and click on name manager just to make sure it's in there successfully and it's spelled correctly. We'll close it out. Now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go over to this next worksheet, mailing stats, and we're going to go ahead and use a nested index and match function so we can look up the city and return the number of responses. So again, what it's going to do is going to travel down, and once it finds the city, then it needs to understand to go over to this column, number of responses, and return that value. So to set that up, we're going to start typing the city name. This is our lookup point. And we're going to go over here and we'll start typing it out, which is equals index, double click, and then we're going to start typing out our database, which we just named, which is responses. It populates below. You can double click on it. And let's start with our first function, which is our match. And then we're going to indicate how we're finding the row. Here's our lookup point, B21. We want to go over to the worksheet. Now this project, we have to write or type out the worksheet names, and don't forget your exclamation point. And we wanted to travel in column A, running down from rows 3 up to 28 to find that lookup point. And we want an exact match. That's what the 0 represents. Comma, and then now match again. Now we got to come up with the column, and we're telling it that go to the mailings worksheet, exclamation point, whatever's sitting in D3, that's the word that we're looking up, comma. You could have just typed the word with it quotations, but that's just another way of referring to it. And then once we're there, we want to go to the mailings worksheet, and we want to travel in row 3 from A3 colon to D3 to find that word in D3, because that'll be the point, our intersection point, and a comma, and we want an exact match. And if you press enter, what I did is I forgot to end right here with my parenthesis, my second one. And you press enter, you should get a value of 343. So again, we're just nesting an index and match functions to come up with our row number and our column, so that when it intersects, it will return that value. And so the intersection point should have been this right here. Let me show you. So this here and then here, and we should have a return value of 343. And if you look, we do. Now I know they want us to go ahead and reduce this down so we don't have anything beyond the decimal point. So I'm going to decrease my decimal and have a value of 343. Now I know they're also going to ask you to go back in here and change your city name, Smyrna, just to show when you press enter, just to show how it updates. Hang on. The typo going into here, I had it stopping at row 8. It should be stopping down at row 28, and that's why I had an error, because if you look on my data sheet, it needs to go way beyond row 8, because this is down all the way down here in row 26. So that's why I initially had an error. So I just went ahead and I updated my typo, which was right here. So that should be A28. So the range runs from A3 to A28. Now up in this area, we're going to use the dsum function, just like we did in a previous video. We used a daverage function. It's going to go to a database, and it's going to sum based on a criteria. But we have to set our criteria up on this worksheet. So let's go ahead and start that first. And it's always good that we're going to need to make sure we understand these locations for the criteria we're setting up. So I just wrote it down on a piece of paper myself, and you'll do the same thing when you're on the job. So, and I'll explain to you when we get to that point. So I'm just going to type in our criteria. So land, and then law with the asterisk, and then patio with the asterisk. Now, these, whenever you're citing the criteria, all you have to do is make sure that your column names are exactly the same as your database. And then you're going to set up your criteria based on whatever it is, meaning that for us, our criteria is going to be based on the department. And you can see the first 3 letters of each department does not repeat itself. So that's why we were able to use the wildcard. And the departments are lawn and maintenance, landscape design, and patio and furniture. So that's our criteria. So we're going to go over here and we're going to, and you can see we label it, and we're going to go ahead and sum them based on the particular departments. And we have to make sure that we're in the correct columns, meaning that there is data for how much were sent out and how many people that responded based on the city, the department. So let's go ahead and start setting that up. So I'm going to start typing the equals, and I'm going to select the dsum, double click it. Now you can either start just following the fields underneath here with the database, the field, and the criteria, or if you prefer, you can open up your dialog box. It's up to you. So the database is the one we just named, which is responses. So I'm going to type that out. You can see it's picking it up. It recognizes it. And the field is, well, it's 3. When we count from those different names, the column fields, if you count to the 3rd one, that's where all our total responses are. So we're just going to enter the number 3. And the criteria, well, we know the criteria is on this criteria worksheet, so I'm going to type that in. Exclamation point, and I know the first one for land, it's in the range from B1 to B2, colon to B2. Now I'm going to apply, I'm going to go ahead and apply absolute cell referencing. So when I copy this, I know it's okay. It will not change the range. So I'm going to apply it to the B1, and I'm also going to apply it to the B2. And then you can see it's picking up a value right here. If you select OK, there's my value. So again, we know that mailed is in 1, 2, 3. It's the 3rd one. That's why we were able to use that number 3. So it identifies as to where to go. So now I'm just going to go ahead and just copy that down, and I'm going to double click. Now I'm just going to change the criteria because I know the lawn and maintenance, that's in rows 4 and 5. So I'm going to backspace the 1 out, type a 4, and I'm going to backspace this out and type a 5. I'm going to check mark that to make the change, and you can see the value updates. And then I'm going to do the same thing with this because now I know this criteria is in 7, row 7 and 8. And I'm going to check mark it because again, you can see this is 7 and 8. So I updated those values. Now I'm going to highlight them, convert my mouse pointer, and just drag it over. And I do want it to repeat itself. So now we know the total number of responses. That's in the 4th column. So I'm just going to double click, and I'm going to change these 3s to a 4. So I'm going to check mark that one, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the same thing to these next 2. And then I'm going to check mark those. And you can see the values have updated itself. Now, when you go into number 4 in your set of instructions, it wants you to sum these values. And then just, I'm going to copy them over. And then I know all of these, they want the comma style applied, and they do not want anything beyond a decimal point. So we're going to reduce those down by using a decrease decimal button. This response rate area here, we're going to skip that. That's number 6. That's your ifs function. We don't have that available to us, so I'm going to add those points manually, so you can just skip that. And we're going to go directly to number 7. And number 7, we're going to use our SUMIFs function, which we need to go to our employee insurance worksheet. And this is our database now that we're going to use. And we're going to go down below here, and we're going to provide, it's going to sum based on this criteria. So the first one is, it's going to sum whatever's here in these columns which is number dependence, but it's going to sum it if it meets the criteria. And the criteria here, you can see it must be Brentwood, and it also must be, so this one is lawn and maintenance, so that wouldn't meet, but anything like this would meet. So that would be landscape and design in Brentwood, so it would go over here and start adding those numbers up. So let's go ahead and start filling that stuff in. So if I start with a equals sum ifs, now this is plural because there are going to be two criterias. Now we can go ahead, once we double click it and get it up and running, you could always open up the function argument dialog box. So again, what I said we're going to sum is we're going to be dealing with the number of dependents. So I'll start with that first number and fill that in. And I'm going to go ahead, I know I'm going to copy it, so I'm going to go ahead and convert those to absolute. Now down here, now what's my first criteria? What is this? Brentwood. So I'm going to start with the first word all the way down to the bottom, fill that range in, and convert it to absolute, and then go down below, and I'm going to use the first, since it's text, I'll start with my quotations, and it's BEN asterisk, or I'm sorry, BRE asterisk for Brentwood. Okay, and now my next criteria is based on the landscape, the department. So here's my range, click and drag the range. I'm going to F4 it to lock it in with absolute cell referencing, and now the criteria is I'm just going to use these first three letters, my quotations, LAN asterisk and quotes, and you can see it's coming up with a value of 10. And if I select OK, I come up with a value of 10 returned. And if I double click on it, you can see how it's color coded. The blue is what's going to add up. The first criteria is based on this range here. It knows what to look for, the characters. Here's my last range here for landscape and design, and it knows what characters to look for to meet that criteria. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to copy that down. And now it should repeat tens. The next one down, all I'm going to do is go ahead and update. So this next one is the Springfield, and this one now is human resources. So you just only need the first three letters. So I'm going to do that for that one. Now this one here, I got to change. Now we're dealing with claims. So this blue, the F, I'm just going to convert my mouse pointer to a move handle and just drag it over, and it updates it. And then just go and update these first three, FOR for forest, and then this one is PAT for patio. And then press enter. And the last one I have to do the same thing because now we're dealing with claims, which I know is over in this column that updates. And now I got to update my criteria, which is GAL. And then this last one is LAW for lawn and maintenance. And I'm going to check mark that. And here are your numbers. Lastly, for consistency, just make sure you highlight this and go to your home tab and select all borders just to reapply those borders. I only have 2 minutes left of taping time for number 8, so I'm going to do this pretty quickly. I'm going to click on birth dates. Now this stuff was transferred in as text, and we got to convert it so Excel recognizes it as date. So we're just going to start cutting it. We're going to go over here. We're going to paste it. Then we're going to use a function equals date value. Do that correct. Date value. And we're going to click on here, which is G4. We're going to end the parenthesis, press enter. Now it's numerical value. We'll copy it down. We got to copy it. When we go over here, we're going to paste it, but it must be pasted as a value. Once it's pasted as a value, make sure you convert it to the short date. I know it's going to ask you to hide these. Right click, and you're going to hide these columns. And then I know we're going to apply some all borders here. So all borders. And then I know from B to D, it's going to ask you to change the column width. And the column width is 13.57. And you select OK. Now, I recommend reading through number 8 to make sure I got everything. I do believe that's everything. You could always pause and replay, even though I went through that pretty quickly. So that's everything for project 6.5.